It was one of those nights that New York seemed to hold its breath. The kind of night where the sky looks slick and metallic, and the streets glow under the weight of a million camera flashes. The Met Gala had rolled into town again, and the stars had followed like moths to a flame, gowns that swept the floor, diamonds that could blind you, and egos big enough to block out the moon. Among them was Haley Kalil. She was the world, model, influencer, known face on every platform with a following big enough to crash a server. She showed up wearing a Marie Antoinette-inspired dress, baby blue with embroidery that shimmered like it had been sewn with moonlight. She looked like royalty, powdered face, towering wig, fan in hand. A living portrait of decadence. Backstage, Alex was watching it all from the shadows. He was a stylist, nothing flashy, just someone who knew how to make the dress fit right, how to steam the crease out of silk without leaving a mark. He'd known Haley for about a year. They weren't close, not really, but he'd seen her behind the makeup before. He remembered one shoot where she cried in the bathroom because a photographer had called her replaceable. He'd offered her tissues and said nothing, and she'd smiled at him like it mattered. It had stuck with him. That night at the Met, Alex was scrolling through his phone between fittings when the video hit. Haley, dressed to the nines, mouthing the words, "Let them eat cake." She posted it herself. Smirking into the camera, music playing in the background, lip-syncing a phrase so historically heavy it had once sparked a revolution. He felt something cold settle in his chest. He watched it again. And again. It wasn't just the dress. It was everything, the timing, the tone, the silence in the face of everything going on in the world. People didn't just criticize it. They tore it apart. Within hours, she became a symbol for how far gone celebrity culture had drifted. People compared it to the Capitol from the Hunger Games. They stitched her video next to footage of bombed-out buildings, starving children, crying mothers. And she hadn't said a word. Alex didn't text her. He didn't know what he'd even say. What do you say to someone you thought had more heart than that? What do you say when they become the punchline to a tragedy? 2 days passed. Then 3. On the 4th, he got a message from her. "Can I talk to you?" They met in a quiet hotel lobby just before noon. She looked nothing like the woman from the red carpet. No makeup. Hair messy, pulled back into a half-hearted bun. Baggy sweatshirt. She looked small, like the world had shrunk around her. She sat down across from him and whispered, "I didn't mean it like that." He didn't answer. I didn't even think about it. My team thought it was funny. It was supposed to be a joke. Like historical irony or something. I didn't realize how bad it would look." She rubbed her face, and he saw the smudge of mascara she hadn't wiped off completely. Cracked when she said, "Everyone hates me." He leaned back in the chair. "It's not about hate." "Then what is it?" "It's about being blind," he said quietly. "You've got a platform. People look at you, and they want something real. Something that matters. And you gave them cake." She flinched like he'd hit her. "I didn't know what to say," she said, almost pleading. "Everyone's screaming about everything. I didn't want to say the wrong thing, so I said nothing. I didn't think silence would hurt this much." He didn't say anything for a long time. The city buzzed outside the window, alive and uncaring. Finally, he said, "You have a chance to fix it. Not to fix how people see you. To fix you. But it's gonna mean listening. Not talking. Not posting. Listening." She nodded, tears clinging to her lashes but refusing to fall. "I don't hate you," he added, softer now. "But the world's burning, Haley. And if we're not helping, we're just dancing around the flames." She reached across the table and took his hand. Maybe it didn't fix anything. Maybe the world would keep burning. But in that moment, it felt like a start. She didn't let go of his hand for a while. They just sat there in silence, her fingers trembling lightly in his, her thumb tracing circles like she needed the connection to stay grounded. Outside, cars honked. People moved on with their lives, coffee cups in hand, phone calls pressed to ears, unaware that the woman who'd just become the most hated face on the internet was quietly falling apart in a corner booth of a hotel lounge. Alex wasn't sure what made him do it, but he offered her a place to stay. Maybe it was the way she looked, so stripped of everything glossy and manicured, like a version of herself even she didn't recognize anymore. Or maybe he just couldn't stand the thought of her alone in that penthouse suite, surrounded by silence and the echo of 1,000 unfollows. She agreed without hesitation. So that night, she came to his apartment. It wasn't much, a tiny walk-up in Brooklyn with creaky floors and a couch that had definitely seen better years. But it was real. Lived in. Safe. She stood in the doorway for a minute, looking around like she'd stepped into another planet. "I haven't stayed anywhere without marble countertops since 2018, she murmured, almost sheepishly. He handed her a blanket and didn't say a word. For the next few days, she stayed. No glam squad. No PR people. Just sweatpants, chipped nail polish, and the ghost of a girl trying to figure out who she'd become. She helped him fold laundry. burnt the first 3 pancakes she tried to make, watched old sitcoms with him until 2 in the morning, and at night, asleep, she sat on the balcony wrapped in his oversized hoodie and scrolled through the hate comments, not with anger, but with this haunted sort of guilt, like she agreed with every single one. On the 5th night, they sat on the floor, sharing a bowl of cereal out of a mixing bowl because he'd run out of clean dishes. She looked at him then, eyes glassy, voice quiet. Do you think I was always like this? Or did I just become her? He didn't answer right away. He couldn't. There were so many versions of her. Haley the model, Haley the influencer, Haley the Marie Antoinette meme. But then he remembered the girl who cried on a photo shoot because someone had said she was forgettable. The one who laughed at his stupid dad jokes. The one who looked at the world like she wanted to care but didn't know how to reach it. I think, he said, after a long pause, you forgot who you were supposed to be. She nodded slowly, like she'd been waiting for someone to say it out loud. That night, she wrote something. Pages of it. A letter. A confession. A raw, unscripted apology not just to her followers, but to herself. She didn't post it, not yet. She wasn't ready. But she left it on the kitchen counter before she went to sleep, folded once, her name written at the bottom. Alex read it the next morning. And for the first time since the scandal broke, he believed she could come back from it, not because of PR spins or image rehab or some glitzy comeback, but because underneath the fall, underneath all the glitter and filters, there was a girl who finally wanted to rise up for the right reasons. He smiled, tucked the letter into his drawer, and let her sleep a little longer. He didn't wake her. Some transformations need silence. And this one, it was just beginning. The letter didn't stay in the drawer. The days that followed weren't dramatic. There were no flashing lights, no redemption arc blasted across morning talk shows, no triumphant return to the red carpet. Instead, there was quiet. And in that quiet, Haley began to change. She took down every old photo from her Instagram that felt fake. She stopped posting for a while. Not out of shame, but out of respect for others, for herself, for the process of learning how to live without needing to be seen all the time. Alex kept living his life, mostly the same. He took gigs here and there, steamed gowns, pinned tuxes, answered emails late at night with one hand while holding takeout with the other. But something shifted between them. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't a grand confession under city lights. It was her brushing his hand when she passed him the coffee mug. It was him learning that she liked to hum old Taylor Swift songs when she was nervous. It was the way she laughed, low and real, one night when they watched a movie and he dropped popcorn all over the floor trying to impress her with a trick shot. Then came the moment he'd been waiting for without realizing it. They were walking home after a small charity event she'd helped organize. Not flashy, just a fundraiser for displaced families. No cameras allowed, no guest list. She wore jeans, sneakers, no makeup. She looked unburdened. They reached his front steps, and she paused, hands in her pockets. I'm leaving next week, she said. His heart dropped. Where to? Gaza. Then Sudan. Then wherever else I'm needed. She didn't say it like she was running. She said it like she was finally moving forward. I want to see it with my own eyes. Not through filtered headlines or staged visits. I want to learn. And listen. He nodded. He wanted to say don't go, but he didn't. That wasn't love. That was fear. And he cared about her too much to hold her back. When you come back, he said, I'll have clean dishes this time. She smiled. That soft, crooked smile he knew better than any viral image. You better. She leaned in and kissed him, not dramatic, not desperate. Just enough to say thank you, and wait for me, and I'll come home when I'm ready. Then she was gone. Not vanished. Not ghosted. Just living. And Alex? He kept the letter she left on his counter. Not because she was famous. Not because the world had watched her fall. But because she got back up. And because when the lights faded, when the hashtags died, when the gowns were packed away, she remembered how to be human again. And sometimes, that's the most revolutionary thing of all. Alex meant to keep it safe. He really did. It felt sacred in a way, like finding the diary of someone right before they decided to change their life. Raw, confessional, trembling between shame and hope. But the truth is, no matter how tightly you hold onto something in this world, the moment it's written down, it wants to be free. It wasn't him who leaked it. He never would have. But people talk. His roommate saw it. Maybe even snapped a photo while Alex wasn't looking. Or maybe it was one of Haley's old assistants who still had access to her digital documents. However it happened, it found its way online. Not as a whole, not in her words exactly, but pieces of it. A few raw lines, out of context, spread like gasoline in a forest already on fire. I became everything I once promised myself I wouldn't. I was afraid that silence was safer than sincerity. I let people starve while I twirled in gowns. When Alex woke up, it was already trending. Hashtags. Reactions. Think pieces. Some praised it. Others mocked it. The internet, ever hungry, didn't care where it came from, only that it had blood on it. She hadn't even known yet. He walked into the living room to find her still curled up under the blanket on his couch, hair messy, phone face down on the floor like she'd fallen asleep trying to ignore it all. He stood there for a moment, just watching her breathe. Then he sat beside her, gently nudging her shoulder. Hey, something happened. She blinked, groggy, then sat up. What? He showed her. He didn't want to, but it was better coming from him. At first, she didn't say anything. She read the screen. Scrolled. Her expression unreadable. When she finally looked at him, her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even scared. I think I needed this, she said, voice calm. Not like this. Not stolen. But out. In the open. You're not mad. I should be, she said. But honestly, I feel lighter. She stood up, stretched, and for the first time in days, she looked alive. I'm gonna finish it, she said. The letter. All of it. Then I'm going to post it. Alex wasn't sure if it was the smartest move. The public didn't forgive easily. Especially not when they thought your pain was performative. But Haley? She wasn't performing anymore. She wrote for hours. Then, against every PR rule, every branded, every crisis management protocol, she posted it. A long caption. No curated photo. No apology video with soft lighting and pained expressions. Just her words. Unfiltered. Untidy. Human. She told them everything. How she'd gotten lost in a world that rewards silence over substance. How her fear of saying the wrong thing made her say nothing at all. How the costume, the caption, all of it, it wasn't meant to hurt, but that didn't make it harmless. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She didn't ask to be understood. She just stood there, finally, as herself. The backlash didn't vanish overnight. Some people still called it too little, too late. Some still dragged her through the mud. But others, quietly, slowly, started to listen. A young girl in Syria messaged her. A doctor in Chicago reposted her caption. A woman in Kenya stitched the letter to a video of herself teaching kids in a refugee camp. Haley watched each one, tears in her eyes, not because she was forgiven, but because for the first time, her voice was being used for something beyond herself. And Alex? He stood by, silent, steady, the anchor in her storm. He knew the world wouldn't forget what she'd done. But maybe, just maybe, they'd remember what she did next. Months passed. The world moved on, as it always does. New scandals rose, new memes were born, the cycle spun without mercy. But every now and then, Haley's name would appear, not in gossip headlines, but in quiet corners of the internet. A photo from a relief center in Gaza, sleeves rolled up, dirt on her face, a child clinging to her leg. A blurry candid from a refugee camp in Sudan, sitting cross-legged on the ground, laughing with a group of women, her hands stained with spice and earth. No brand logos. No filters. No captions begging for applause. Just presence. She wrote articles. Quiet, thoughtful ones. She worked behind the scenes, not needing to prove anything anymore. She made mistakes, sure, but they were honest ones. Human ones. And Alex? He was still in Brooklyn. Still steaming gowns, still chasing invoices, still making pancakes that always came out slightly burnt. But every few weeks she'd call. Not always to talk. Sometimes just to listen. And one day, after 6 months, one day, and a handful of hours, he looked out the window and saw her standing on the sidewalk. No luggage. No announcement. Just her. He opened the door before she could knock. She didn't say, I'm back. She didn't need to. She just stepped inside, dropped her bag by the couch, and looked around at the apartment where she'd once hidden from the world. Do you still burn the pancakes? She asked, smirking. He grinned. Worse than ever. She laughed, really laughed, and for the first time in what felt like 100 lifetimes, they were just two people in a small, messy apartment. No scandals. No cameras. No ghosts. Just a girl who had fallen. A boy who had stayed. And a love that had quietly waited in the silence between them. The end.